The rain fell in steady sheets across Terra Central's landing pad, turning the gleaming white surface into a mirror of the grey sky above. Dr. Elias Carter adjusted his biosuit hood, watching as the sleek silver shuttle descended through the low clouds. Its engines hissed against the rain, sending up plumes of steam as it touched down. The Galactic Health Authority's sigil, a trio of interlocking DNA strands, glowed faintly on the hull. "Remember protocol," Carter muttered to the team of human medics flanking him, their breath fogged in the cold air, visors already misting from the humidity. "Full decon procedures. No direct contact until cleared." A hydraulic whine cut through the rain as the shuttle's ramp lowered. Inspector Vex'lorn emerged, his chitinous form towering over the humans. Bioluminescent veins pulsed beneath his segmented plates, casting an eerie blue-green light across the wet pavement. 4 arms unfolded from his torso, the upper pair clutching a data tablet while the lower adjusted the ceremonial sash across his thorax. "Dr. Carter, I presume." Vex'lorn's voice buzzed through mandibles that clicked with each syllable. "I expected warmer reception from a species so eager to join the Galactic Health Compact." Carter forced a smile. "Welcome to Earth. Inspector, standard quarantine protocols require unnecessary." Vex'lorn waved a clawed hand, droplets scattering from his carapace. "Your primitive containment measures are irrelevant to Zorathian physiology." He stepped off the ramp directly onto the tarmac, ignoring the decontamination spray arching overhead. "Our immune systems evolved during the Shithrak's plague wars. Your microbes are less than nothing." One of the junior medics coughed. Carter shot him a warning glance before turning back to their guest. "With all due respect, Inspector, we've had incidents with off-world pathogens before. The Black Winter of Fae, a human problem." Vex'lorn's antennae twitched as he surveyed the facility. "Your species lacks proper biological resilience. That is why the gas sent me, to evaluate whether Terra meets minimum sanitation standards for interspecies trade." His scanner beeped as he passed it over a puddle. "Fascinating. This water contains traces of, what do you call them? Cold viruses." Nurse Priya Singh tightened her grip on the sterilization wand. "Common rhinoviruses, yes, harmless to humans, but amusing." Vex'lorn pocketed the scanner without wiping it. "To think your kind considers such trivialities worth monitoring. On Zorath Prime, we bathe in acid pools to strengthen our exodermis." He gestured toward the building. "Shall we? I'd like to see these famous hospitals your application boasted about." The walk to the main complex took longer than Carter anticipated. Every few steps, Vex'lorn paused to examine some new example of human frailty, a medic adjusting their gloves, barrier suits. How quaint the air filtration systems. You filter your own atmosphere. Even the hand sanitizer stations, chemical crutches for defective immune systems. By the time they reached the central hub, Carter's jaw ached from clenching. The automatic doors hissed open, revealing the sterile white corridors of Terra Central's main ward. Staff in blue scrubs moved between rooms, their faces obscured by transparent visors. Vex'lorn's bioluminescence flared brighter. "Remarkable. You've built an entire facility around the concept of weakness." He tapped a claw against the wall. "These containment fields, you actually separate the sick from the healthy. It is called infection control," Singh said through gritted teeth. The inspector emitted a series of clicks, Zorathian laughter. "On my world, the strong survive, the weak." "Well," he flexed his lower arms. "Natural selection." Carter intercepted a nurse carrying a tray of vaccines. "Inspector, perhaps you'd like to see our immunization program. We've eradicated 14 major diseases in the past century." Vex'lorn examined a vial labeled Influenza Type A with obvious disdain. "Crude chemical band-aids. A proper species develops natural resistances." He handed it back without precautions. "Tell me, Doctor, do you actually fear these? What are they called?" common colds. Before Carter could answer, a chorus of coughing erupted from the pediatric wing. A group of children, some human, others from the small population of interspecies residents, were being led down the hall by a teacher. Several wiped their noses on their sleeves. Vex'lorn's antennae stiffened. "You allow the young to commingle while ill." His bioluminescence flickered erratically. This explains so much about human fragility. One of the children, a freckled girl no older than 6, sneezed violently. The spray glistened in the air for a moment before dissipating. The inspector didn't flinch. "Observe," he said, spreading his arms wide. "Not even your most virulent pathogens can." His words cut off as his left mid-arm joint emitted an audible crack. Silence fell over the corridor. Even the children stopped fidgeting. Vex'lorn examined his elbow joint, where a thin green fluid now seeped between the plates. "Impossible," he buzzed. "Your atmosphere must contain corrosive elements." Carter reached for his scanner. "Inspector, let me unnecessary." Vex'lorn jerked away, but the movement caused another crack, this time along his thoracic ridge. The blue glow beneath his carapace dimmed momentarily. A minor atmospheric adjustment reaction. Zorathian systems require periodic recalibration in oxygen-rich environments. From the nursing station, someone muttered, "Bullshit." The inspector's head snapped toward the sound, but another cracking noise, louder this time, drew his attention back to his own body. The chitin around his neck joint had begun to peel upward, revealing moist tissue beneath. "Perhaps," Vex'lorn said, his voice uncharacteristically thin, "we should accelerate the tour schedule." Carter exchanged glances with Singh. The nurse's eyes widened slightly behind her visor. Neither needed to say what they both understood. Something was very, very wrong. The sterile white corridors of Terra Central buzzed with activity as Nurse Priya Singh led the towering Zorathian through the quarantine wing. Vex'lorn's chitinous feet clicked against the polished floors. His forearms folded behind his back in a display of obvious disdain. His bioluminescent veins pulsed a steady blue, casting an eerie glow across the human medical staff, who hurried out of his way. "These are our primary treatment bays," Priya said, gesturing to the rows of beds filled with human patients. Monitors beeped softly above each one, displaying vital signs in steady green waveforms. "We're currently housing 237 cases of..." "Fascinating," Vex'lorn interrupted, his translator emitting a dry, synthesized tone. He extended one clawed hand toward a child coughing into a mask. The scanner embedded in his wrist chirped sharply. "Your young are even more vulnerable than I anticipated. Their immune systems are practically non-existent." Priya's grip tightened around her tablet. "Actually, children's immune systems are highly adaptive. That is why we... adaptive." The Zorathian's mandibles spread in what humans had learned was their version of a sneer. He tapped his scanner against a wall-mounted sanitizer unit. "This entire facility reeks of desperation. Sterilization fields, air filters." He shook his elongated head. A proper species wouldn't need such primitive measures. They passed a team of surgeons exiting an operating theater, their scrubs splashed with blood. Vex'lorn's bioluminescence flickered yellow for a brief moment. Disgust Priya's training had taught her. "Your surgical procedures are equally barbaric," he continued, pausing to examine a tray of discarded instruments. "Cutting flesh like savages. The Galactic standard employs molecular separation fields." One of the surgeons, a grizzled man with streaks of gray in his hair, didn't bother looking up as he snapped. "Works just fine for patching up idiots who think they're too good for basic hygiene." Vex'lorn's veins flared crimson. Priya stepped between them before the situation escalated. "Perhaps we should proceed to the virology lab?" The tour continued, each stop fueling Vex'lorn's condescension. In the vaccination ward, he watched a nurse administer a flu shot to an elderly woman and actually laughed a series of clicking vibrations from his thoracic cavity, injecting weakened pathogens. He turned to Priya, his ocular lenses narrowing. This is your grand solution. My species developed targeted genetic immunity 10,000 cycles ago. A nearby medtech muttered under her breath, "Bet you still get space sniffles." Vex'lorn either didn't hear or chose to ignore the comment. He was too busy examining a display of human vaccines, poking at the vials with obvious revulsion. Crude. Absolutely crude. The Galactic Health Authority will have serious concerns about allowing your kind unrestricted travel. Priya forced a professional smile. With all due respect, Inspector, our methods have increased the average human lifespan by over 40 years in the last century alone. By galactic standards, your elderly are barely mature. Vex'lorn waved a dismissive hand toward a patient in their 90s. That specimen should have centuries of productivity remaining. The old man in question, hooked to a dialysis machine, raised a shaky middle finger without opening his eyes. They reached the infectious disease unit, where researchers in full containment gear worked behind thick glass. Vex'lorn pressed one claw against the transparent barrier, his scanner running rapid diagnostics on the specimens within. "Remarkable," he said. And for a moment, Priya thought she'd finally impressed him. Then he continued. "Remarkable that your civilization hasn't collapsed under the weight of so many microbial threats. This entire wing is dedicated to what? Tiny organisms that your bodies can't even repel without artificial aid." Dr. Carter's voice came from behind them. "Those tiny organisms are why we have the most robust immune systems in known space." The chief medical officer approached, his white coat flaring as he walked. "Every human alive today is descended from ancestors who survived plagues that would make your database scream." Vex'lorn's bioluminescence flickered again, this time in amusement. "A charming myth, Doctor, but the scans don't lie." He held up his wrist display, showing a rotating model of human cell structures. "Your biology is soft, vulnerable. It is no wonder the Federation insists on these quarantine measures. You're practically walking petri dishes." A loud sneeze echoed from a nearby exam room. Vex'lorn's head snapped toward the sound, his posture suddenly rigid. "Bless you," called a nurse automatically. The Zorathian took an involuntary step back. That aerosolized expulsion. "You don't even contain your bodily fluids properly?" Priya exchanged a glance with Dr. Carter. "It is just a sneeze," she said slowly. "We have protocols for unacceptable." Vex'lorn's veins were pulsing rapidly now, cycling through colors Priya hadn't seen before. "This entire facility is a biohazard waiting to happen. I'll be recommending immediate sanctions until you implement proper." Another sneeze cut him off. Closer this time, a young intern walked past them, sniffling into a tissue. "Sorry," the intern mumbled. "Ologies." Vex'lorn actually recoiled, all four arms coming up in a defensive posture. His scanner started beeping frantically. "Keep that contagion vector away from me." Dr. Carter raised an eyebrow. "I thought Zorathians didn't fear our microbes." "We don't," Vex'lorn snapped, though his trembling appendages suggested otherwise. "But galactic regulations clearly state." A drop of moisture glistened at the edge of one of his breathing vents. Priya frowned. Was the inspector sweating? Vex'lorn seemed to notice it at the same time. One clawed hand rose to touch the liquid, then recoiled as if burned. His bioluminescence stuttered, the steady pulse becoming erratic. "Impossible," he whispered. The word came out slightly garbled, as if his translator was malfunctioning. "Your pathogens cannot affect me." Dr. Elias Carter watched as Inspector Vex'lorn strode through the quarantine wing, his chitinous limbs moving with the usual Zorathian arrogance. The alien's bioluminescent veins pulsed a steady blue, though Carter could have sworn they flickered just slightly as they passed the pediatric ward. "These containment procedures are excessive," Vex'lorn said. his voice a grating buzz. He waved a dismissive upper limb at the airlock seals. Your species' paranoia is noted, but unnecessary. Galactic Health Protocol FAD clearly states. Protocol FAD was written for species with natural biofilters. Nurse Singh cut in, her gloved hands adjusting a patient's IV. Human immune systems work differently. Vex'lorn's mandibles twitched in what Carter had learned was the equivalent of a sneer. Differently, you mean deficiently. He tapped his scanner against the glass of an isolation room, where a child with a mild fever slept. This one's white blood cell count is pitiful. A Zorathian hatchling could withstand 10 times this pathogen load without symptoms. Carter clenched his jaw but kept his voice even. Our immune systems adapt. That child's body is learning right now how to fight that virus forever. Primitive, Vex'lorn scoffed. He turned abruptly, his exoskeleton clicking. Show me your so-called vaccination labs. Let us see these crude chemical band-aids up close. The tour continued, Vex'lorn growing more dismissive with each stop. In the virology lab, he refused a mask despite the bright red biohazard warnings. Your microbes are harmless to my kind, he declared, breathing deeply as if to prove his point. Zorathian respiratory systems are impervious to organic contaminants. Carter exchanged a glance with Singh. The nurse's raised eyebrow said everything. This guy's gonna regret that. It wasn't until they reached the epidemiology department that Carter noticed the first sign. Vex'lorn's bioluminescence, usually a steady rhythm, flickered like a faulty bulb. The alien paused mid-sentence during his critique of human antibody research, his lower left arm twitching uncontrollably for half a second. You all right, Inspector? Carter asked, feigning polite concern. Perfectly functional, Vex'lorn snapped, but his voice carried an unfamiliar rasp. Your artificial lighting is interfering with my photophores, a common issue when inspecting backward facilities. Singh pretended to study a chart, but Carter saw her hide a smirk. By the time they reached the cafeteria, Vex'lorn was sweating, or at least the Zorathian equivalent. Greenish fluid beaded between his exoskeletal plates, dripping onto the sterile floor. A janitor mopped it up without comment, though his eyes widened slightly at the acidic sizzle the droplets made on contact with the disinfectant. Perhaps we should cut the tour short, Carter suggested as Vex'lorn stumbled against a doorframe. You look, I require no special consideration, the inspector hissed, but his words ended in a wet, rattling cough that made his entire carapace vibrate. A thin trail of emerald mucus dripped from his mandibles. Singh was already reaching for a biohazard kit. Inspector, I really think. Vex'lorn waved her off, then froze. His forearms trembled as he stared at his own limb. The chitin at the joints had begun to peel, revealing raw, inflamed tissue beneath. Impossible, he whispered. His bioluminescence flared erratically, cycling through panic, inducing colors no human had ever seen on a Zorathian. Your pathogens cannot affect me. Our biology is superior. Carter grabbed a scanner and ran it over the alien's thorax. The readings made his blood run cold. Your immune system is in full collapse, he said quietly. Whatever's in you, it's replicating at an insane rate. Vex'lorn's knees buckled. He caught himself on a table, his claws digging grooves into the synthetic surface. What have you people done to me? The last word came out as a gurgle before his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed in a twitching heap. His carapace hit the floor with a crack, fissures spiderwebbing across what should have been impervious biological armor. Singh was already shouting for a containment team. Carter knelt beside the fallen inspector, his mind racing. The scanner showed it clearly, a mutated human rhinovirus, something that should have been harmless. Only it wasn't attacking human cells anymore. It had found something new to infect, and it was winning. Vex'lorn's fourth arm twitched first. The Zorathian inspector had been lecturing Nurse Singh about proper sterilization protocols when his chitinous plating made an audible crack, like ceramic splitting under heat. His bioluminescent veins, usually a steady pulse of violet, flickered yellow-green. "Are you? All right." Singh kept her voice neutral, but her fingers hovered near the emergency call button. Vex'lorn straightened, mandibles clicking dismissively. "Zorathian biology operates at efficiencies your primitive medical texts cannot." A wet, gurgling cough cut him off. Something thick and iridescent dribbled from between his mandibles. It sizzled where it hit the floor. Dr. Carter arrived just as Vex'lorn's knee joints buckled. The alien caught himself on a wall monitor, his grip cracking the screen. Alarms blared as vital signs from the pediatric ward flooded the display. All normal, except for the four-armed health inspector currently leaking green fluid from his carapace seams. "Get quarantine protocols active," Carter snapped to Singh, full biocontainment. Now, Vex'lorn wheezed, his thoracic vents whistling like a broken steam valve. "Unnecessary. Your pathogens cannot." His voice modulator glitched, cycling through 3 languages before settling on a distorted version of Galactic Common. "My systems are compromised." Security Chief Holt arrived with a TAC team, their visors already sealed. They froze at the sight of the inspector. Vex'lorn's exoskeleton was peeling back in jagged sections, revealing pulsing membranes beneath. His bioluminescence stuttered like a dying neon sign. "Jesus," Holt muttered. "What the hell is happening to him?" Carter didn't answer. He was reading the scanner results Singh had discreetly run. The numbers made no sense. This can't be right. It's just a mutated rhinovirus. The common cold." Vex'lorn collapsed. His carapace hit the floor with a sound like dropped dinner plates. All 4 arms spasmed, claws scraping grooves in the hospital tiles. The fluid pooling around him ate through the linoleum in seconds. "Don't touch him," Carter barked as 2 medics moved forward. "That's not blood. It's liquefied organ tissue." The Zorathian's voice came out in a wet rasp. My immune archives. No records, no defenses." His central eye, usually a piercing silver, clouded over. "What have you people done to me?" Holt grabbed Carter's arm. "We need to contain this. If whatever's killing him gets out, it won't." Carter stared at the dying alien. "Our bugs don't play well with others." Singh was already sealing the corridor. "We need to incinerate everything in this wing. Walls, floors, air." Vex'lorn convulsed. A section of his abdominal plating split open, releasing a flood of that shimmering green sludge. The stench hit like ammonia and rotting fruit. 2 security officers gagged inside their helmets. "Listen to me." Carter knelt just outside the spreading puddle. "Your people need to know human diseases adapt. They rewrite themselves when they encounter new biology. Do you understand?" The inspector's remaining eye focused weakly. His voice was barely audible over the hissing corrosion of the floor. You are not. The weak ones." Then his thoracic cavity imploded. The sound was like a watermelon dropped from a great height. Chitin fragments embedded themselves in the ceiling. Holt's team shielded their visors as acidic mist filled the hallway. When the smoke cleared, only a bubbling green stain remained where the galaxy's foremost health inspector had stood. Singh exhaled slowly. "Well, that's going to require paperwork." Holt tapped his comb. "Director Kessler?" "Yeah, we've got a situation. The geisha guy just melted somewhere in the wreckage." Vex'lorn's datapad beeped. The screen flashed. "Report incomplete," before going dark forever. The autopsy room hummed with the sterile glow of overhead lights. Dr. Elias Carter adjusted his respirator, the seal tight against his face. Around him, a team of Terra Central's top virologists worked in silence, their hazmat suits reflecting the cold blue light of the containment field. Vex'lorn's body lay on the table, his once gleaming chitin now dull and cracked, bioluminescent veins dark. "Begin recording," Carter said, his voice muffled through the mask. Subject: Galactic Health Authority Inspector Vex'lorn, Zorathian male, approximately Phi Earth years in age, time of death, Fei Terran Standard. Nurse Singh handed him a scanner, her gloves squeaking against the device. His vitals crashed faster than we predicted, even with our stabilizers. Carter nodded, running the scanner over Vex'lorn's thorax. The readout flickered, then displayed a cascade of errors. That's because his organs aren't just failing, they're liquefying. A junior medic, Ensign Rivas, gagged as Carter carefully pried open a section of the exoskeleton. Greenish fluid seeped out, thick and pungent. The smell punched through even the hazmat filters. "Got him," Rivas muttered, turning away. "Focus," Carter snapped. He prodded the exposed tissue with a sterilized probe. It parted like overcooked meat. This isn't just necrosis. This is dissolution. His cellular structure is coming apart at the molecular level. Singh leaned in, her scanner beeping urgently. "It's the rhinovirus, the same strain we isolated from patient 0 in the pediatric wing last week. But it's different now." Carter frowned. Run the comparison again. The holographic display flickered to life between them. 2 genetic strands rotating side by side. The human variant was simple. Benign the other, recovered from Vex'lorn's bloodstream, was a snarled, aggressive thing. Its protein spikes mutated into barbed hooks. "It rewrote itself," Singh whispered. "The moment it hit his biology, it adapted." Carter's stomach dropped, head seen fast. Mutating pathogens before, but nothing like this. Human viruses weren't supposed to cross species barriers this easily. Then again, most species hadn't spent millennia evolving alongside humanity's relentless immune arms race. The comm panel on the wall chimed. A harried-looking GAR representative flickered into view, his holographic form glitching with interference. "Dr. Carter," the alien barked, his voice tinny through the speakers. "We demand immediate transmission of Inspector Vex'lorn's medical data. The authority will have answers." Carter exchanged a glance with Singh. "We're still running diagnostics," he said carefully. The GAR rep's frills flared in irritation. "Your obfuscation is noted. Preliminary scans indicate catastrophic system failure. Was there negligence in your quarantine protocols?" Carter almost laughed. "No, your inspector refused all precautions, called our procedures primitive. Impossible Zorathian physiology is impervious to class Fey biohazards." "Yeah," Carter gestured to the table. "Tell that to him." The rep's hologram flickered as he leaned closer, finally registering the state of Vex'lorn's remains. His frills stiffened. "By the first hive. What is that?" Singh tapped her datapad, pulling up the viral model. "Human rhinovirus strain HFY. Common cold, harmless to us. But when it encountered Zorathian cell structures, it mutated into something else." She zoomed in on the projection. "See these replication nodes? It's not just infecting, it's disassembling his biology for raw materials." The GOR rep recoiled. "You're saying a Terran sniffle did this?" Carter crossed his arms. "I'm saying your inspector's arrogance killed him. Our immune systems evolved alongside these pathogens, yours didn't." Silence hung in the air. The rep's hologram flickered again, his voice quieter now. "This data cannot leave this facility." "Too late," Singh said. "We've already sequenced it for research purposes." The rep's frills went flat. "You don't understand. If this reaches the Galactic Senate." "It won't," Carter interrupted. "Not if you stop treating Earth like a backwater petri dish." The hologram wavered, the rep's expression unreadable. Then, with a final burst of static, he vanished. Singh exhaled. "They're going to bury this." Carter peeled off his gloves, tossing them into the biohazard bin. "Yeah, but they won't forget." He glanced at Vex'lorn's remains, the truth settling like a weight. Turns out human viruses adapt when they meet alien biology, and they adapt fast. The team worked in silence after that. The only sound the hum of the containment field and the occasional drip of viscous fluid onto the floor. Somewhere in the depths of Terra Central, a vault door sealed shut on a file labeled Vex'lorn Incident. And in the darkness, something new and hungry stirred. The war room of Terra Central Command hummed with tension. Director Ava Kessler leaned over the holotable, her fingers steepled as half a dozen furious alien faces flickered in the blue light. The Galactic Health Authority representatives had been screaming for 3 hours straight. "Explain this immediately," snarled High Examiner Krillix, his chitinous faceplates vibrating with rage. The Vorthan's 4 eyes burned crimson. Inspector Vex'lorn was perfectly healthy when he arrived on your wretched mudball. Dr. Carter didn't flinch. He tapped the autopsy report on his datapad. Actually, he wasn't. His immune system had 0 adaptive markers for Earth, class pathogens. It's like he walked into a viral war zone naked. A new face flickered into the call, a Zorathian elder, his bioluminescent veins pulsing erratically. "You murdered one of our best inspectors with your filthy human plagues." Kessler sighed. "With all due respect, Elder Vosk, your inspector refused every quarantine protocol. He called our vaccines primitive and licked a handrail to prove a point." Silence. The Vorak health delegate, wrapped in 3 layers of containment fabric, whimpered. "You're telling us a Zorathian was killed by a human sniffle?" Carter zoomed in on the microscopic scans. Not just any sniffle, a mutated rhinovirus strain. When it hit his alien biology, well, the image shifted to Vex'lorn's liquefied respiratory organs. Let's just say human viruses get creative with new hosts. Krillix slammed a clawed fist into his console. "This is an act of biological warfare." "Nope," said Kessler, "just Tuesday on Earth." She flicked a file across the table. According to Article Fay of the Galactic Health Code, any inspector assumes full risk when waiving standard bioprotocols. Vex'lorn signed the waiver twice. The elder's veins darkened. "There will be consequences." Kessler smiled. "Sure, but first," she tapped a command. Every screen in the room switched to a classified feed, 12 Zorathian battleships, hovering just outside Luna's orbit. "You might want to recall your fleet before they catch space flu." The Vorak delegate choked. "You infected their ships?" "Nah, but their life support filters. Those are terrible against aerosolized measles." Carter shrugged. "We'd hate for this to become contagious." The alien delegates erupted into chaos. Kessler muted them all with a swipe. "Prep the sanitization teams," she ordered, "and lock the Vex'lorn files under Protocol Black." A junior officer hesitated. "What do we tell the guy?" Kessler slid the folder into a biometric vault. It hissed shut with a final clunk. "Tell them their inspector left without filing his report." Down in the morgue, Nurse Singh peeled off her gloves. The autopsy table gleamed under UV sterilizers. A single drop of green fluid sizzled in the drain. Somewhere above, the Zorathian fleet began emergency decontamination procedures. And in the darkest corners of the galactic net, a new phrase started trending. Don't visit Terra. The next Galactic Health Authority inspector arrived 3 standard cycles after Vex'lorn's body had been discreetly incinerated. Nurse Priya Singh watched through the observation window as the new inspector's shuttle touched down, its engines whining in protest against Terra's gravity. The Vorak diplomat emerged wrapped in no less than 3 layers of biosafety containment gear, his 4 insectoid legs clicking nervously against the landing pad. "Another one," muttered Security Chief Holt, adjusting his sidearm. "Think this one'll last longer than 8 hours." Priya didn't answer. She was too busy counting the number of filtration units on the inspector's helmet. That is excessive. Inside the decontamination chamber, the Vorak Inspector Krixval, according to his credentials, stood rigid as the sterilization mist cycled through. His faceted eyes darted around the room, lingering on every air vent like it might spew death at any moment. When the inner doors finally hissed open, he flinched. "Welcome to Terra Central," Priya said, holding out a sterilized datapad. "Your inspection itinerary has been cleared by Director Kessler." Krixval didn't take it. His mandibles worked silently for a moment before he rasped. "Is this the same facility where Inspector Vex'lorn left without filing his report?" Priya finished smoothly. "Yes, though we've since upgraded our air filtration." She kept her face perfectly neutral as the Vorak's antennae twitched. Behind her, 2 human interns exchanged glances. One coughed into his elbow. Krixval recoiled so hard his carapace clacked against the wall. That sound, is that a respiratory contagion?" "Allergies," Priya said. "Pollen season." The Vorak made a noise like a malfunctioning coolant pump. "Pollen, you mean your plants are weaponized?" One of the interns, Park, fresh out of xenomedical training, leaned in. "Wait till you hear about poison ivy." Priya shot him a look. "What my colleague means is that Earth's ecosystem is robust. We prepared a full briefing on necessary precautions." She tapped the datapad against her palm, starting with not removing your helmet, ever. Krixval's bioscanner chirped frantically as he eyed the humans. "Your atmospheric readings are alarming. The microbial load is normal for Earth," Priya interrupted. "Our immune systems handle it, mostly." "Mostly," she shrugged. "You ever heard of something called the common cold?" The Vorak's exoskeleton paled visibly. "That is not in the briefing materials." Down the hall, Dr. Carter leaned against the nurse's station watching the exchange. "He is not going to make it to lunch, is he?" Chief Holt snorted. "I give him 6 hours before he demands an emergency evacuation." They watched as Krixval nearly jumped out of his carapace when a janitor sneezed 3 doors down. The Vorak spun, scanner shrieking. "What was that? What species of pathogen just—" "Bless you, Carl," Priya called, then lowered her voice. "Inspector, perhaps we should begin the tour before your suit is biofilter overloads." Krixval's breathing was audible through his helmet's vocoder. "Yes, proceed, but maintain a minimum 2-meter distance at all times." The tour was the shortest in Terra Central's history. Krixval refused to enter any room with more than 3 humans present. He audibly gagged when shown the pediatric wing. "You mean your offspring survive in this plague environment?" By the time they reached the virology lab, his scanner had flatlined twice from sheer panic. "These are our latest vaccine cultures," Priya said, gesturing to a sealed incubator. The Vorak didn't get closer than 5 feet. You cultivate your diseases on purpose." "Only the weak ones," Park said cheerfully. "The nasty stuff we keep in biosafety level Faye." Krixval's knees actually buckled. "Level 4, the guess scale only goes to 3. Priya sighed. Earth added some categories. It was when they passed the cafeteria that the Vorak finally broke. A group of nurses were laughing over steaming cups of coffee, one blowing her nose into a tissue before tossing it into a nearby bin. Krixval's scanner emitted a continuous shriek. Those nasal secretions are just out in the open. Used tissues go in the biohazard waste, Priya said patiently. That is not a biohazard container. The Vorak's voice cracked. That is a plastic-lined bin. One of the nurses, Rodriguez from ICU, waved a muffin. Want one fresh from the oven. Krixval made a sound no Vorak throat should physically produce. You consume baked goods in the same facility where you handle level Fey pathogens. Rodriguez took a huge bite. Yup, the inspector turned to Priya, his faceted eyes wild. I am revising my inspection protocol, effective immediately. All GAR personnel will conduct remote evaluations via secured drone feed. Priya blinked. You're not going to see the morgue. Krixval was already backing toward the exit. I have seen enough. His voice dropped to a whisper. Your planet should be quarantined. As the Vorak fled, Chief Holt ambled over. Think he'll file his report? Priya watched the inspector practically sprint for his shuttle. Doubt it. In the cafeteria, Rodriguez licked muffin crumbs off her fingers. Weaklings, Park grinned. Should I tell him about stomach flu next time? Priya sighed. Let's not give the guy a reason to blockade Earth. But as she turned back to her duties, she couldn't suppress a small, satisfied smile. The message was clear. Humanity's greatest defense wasn't weapons or shields. It was germs. The grand halls of the Galactic Senate buzzed with hushed conversations, the usual political murmurings replaced by something far more primal, fear. Delegates from 100 species clustered in tight groups, their appendages gesturing wildly, their voices dropping to whispers whenever a human passed by. The polished floors reflected the nervous twitching of antennae and the uneasy sway of tentacles. Ambassador Daniel Grayson sipped his coffee, the steam curling around his face as he leaned against a marble pillar. His mug read "World's Oakest Pathogen Vector" in cheerful block letters. A group of Zorathian diplomats recoiled as he took another sip, their bioluminescent veins pulsing erratically. You see the latest health advisory, muttered a Felinar senator to his companion, his fur standing on end. Category 7 biohazard protocols for all human contact. Ridiculous, hissed a Vorak delegate, adjusting the seal on his environmental suit. They look so harmless, soft skin, no natural armor, barely any regenerative capabilities. And yet, interrupted a trembling Cephalian, her chromatophores flashing anxious purple, one of their common colds liquefied Inspector Vex'lorn from the inside out. Daniel chuckled into his coffee. The sound made 3 nearby delegates flinch. Across the hall, Senator Crixthal of the Zorathian hegemony shuddered, his chitinous plates rattling. He'd been the one to push for Terra's inclusion in the Galactic Health Accords. Now his political opponents circulated footage of Vex'lorn's final moments, the mighty inspector reduced to a twitching, oozing wreck in a human medical bay. Ambassador Grayson, Crixthal forced out, mandibles clicking nervously. Surely your people have explanations. Daniel shrugged. Evolution's a bitch. He took another leisurely sip. Turns out, when you spend 200,000 years wrestling viruses into vaccines, the ones that survive get creative. A hush fell over the nearest delegates. You're telling me, whispered a wide-eyed Thalassian, this was just natural selection? Yep, Daniel grinned. And here is the fun part. Our immune systems, they're still fighting even now. He tapped his chest. Every human's basically a walking bioweapons lab. Half our white blood cells would probably try to eat you for lunch just to see what happens. The Vorak delegate made a wet, choking sound. Senator Crixthal's bioluminescence dimmed. Then why aren't you all dead? Daniel's smile didn't reach his eyes. Oh, we are, constantly. We just call it Tuesday. He raised his mug in mock toast. Cheers. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the distance, a sanitation droid sprayed disinfectant foam across a bench where a human diplomat had sat 5 minutes prior. This changes everything, muttered the Felinar senator. If their baseline microorganisms are this lethal, imagine their engineered plagues, finished the Cephalian, her skin now a sickly grey. Daniel set his mug down with a clink. Gentle beings, let's not get dramatic. We're perfectly safe. He spread his hands. As long as you don't breathe near us or touch anything we've touched or share air filtration systems, or a Zorathian aide fainted. You know what? Maybe just stay in your ships. Senator Crixthal's mandibles worked soundlessly for a moment before he managed. The health authority will need assurances. Daniel pulled a data chip from his pocket and tossed it. The delegates scattered like leaves in wind, letting it clatter to the floor. Full medical workup, he said. Every human pathogen catalogued. Well, the ones we've found so far. The Felinar used a telescoping grabber tool to retrieve the chip, holding it at arm's length. This is thorough. Yep, page face my favorite. The one that makes your nervous system attack itself. We call it the sniffles. The Vorak delegate made another strangled noise and hurried away. Crixthal stared at the chip like it might explode. And you just live with these. Daniel stretched, yawning. You get used to it. Fever dreams are wild. He checked his watch. Speaking of, I should get my flu shot. They're brewing this season's batch from a nice Martian strain, extra spicy. The remaining delegates exchanged glances. The Cephalian's skin had settled on a permanent shade of nauseated green. As Daniel strolled away, whistling, the whispers started again, louder now, edged with something like awe. Monsters, breathed a Thalassian envoy. Nah, corrected a human aide passing by, popping a cough drop. We just call it immune system. You might want to invest in some. Senator Crixthal watched Ambassador Grayson disappear around a corner, then slowly reached for his comm. Cancel all planetary inspections, he told his aide. And for the love of the first hive, quarantine that coffee mug. And that's why the Galactic Health Authority no longer does surprise inspections on Terra.